What we have mistakenly defined as creation is in fact A, the centrifugal condensation of spiritual substance into the infinite variations of physical form, and B, the centripetal involution of physical forms, dissipating back into spiritual substance, what we have come to define as the cycles of life. Thus, what the priesthood of the church of the quantum cult of Western science and their holy order of call a universe from nothing to their Big Bang is actually the divine eternal process of condensation and dissipation following the divine intentional dynamics of an imperceptible and unfathomable intelligence. And here is where the cognitive dissonance of modern science kicks in. Western scientific thought seeks to reduce the omniscient, omnipresent, ineffable intelligence we call God through their futile attempts to circumscribe it, name it, and thus limit it to their mathematical equations, all for the unlimited purpose, or the ultimate purpose, of packaging it, barcoding it, and thus owning it for commercial distribution. Their ongoing mission is to penetrate, appropriate, and violate the secrets of the divine, to reduce God to a rule of thumb, a principle, an energy, to a label complete with instructions and recognizable contents, all to expose the hidden creator as nothing more than the sum of its sensually determined parts, to expose where it hides and how it hides itself. And remember, beloved church, in the game of hide and seek, when the one who is hidden is found, they lose. This is why I have dedicated this presentation to putting the new inquisition of the quantum cult on blast. I dedicate this lecture to exposing the perpetrators, the deluders, the confusers, the assorted trolls and agent provocateurs hired by academia and the media to distract us from the personal pursuit of true science and analysis. I call out the new inquisitors of the quantum cult: Neil deGrasse Tyson, Michio Kaku, Lawrence Krauss, etc., ad nauseum. You see, unlike the old inquisitions that used the rack, the Iron Maiden, thumb screws, tongue prongs, and the dunking stool, these techniques of coercion and persuasion have been replaced by mockery, ridicule, scorn, shaming, vilification, taunting, teasing, and derision in the social media. Fact is, the operational protocols of the quantum cult requires their priests to outright reject all things that cannot be observed, weighted, reduced, itemized, measured, and cataloged by them under these strict rules of thumb. Their priesthood must also reject the findings of independent free thinkers and explorers operating outside the liturgical protocols of their faith. Now, the separation by Western science of the measurable from the immeasurable became prominent in the mindset and practices of the Western scientific cult when a man named René Descartes introduced his hypothesis of dualism regarding the body and the soul in his thesis entitled "A Discourse on the Method for Rightly Directing One's Reason and Searching for Truth in the Sciences," circa 1637. René Descartes introduced into the Western scientific mindset what became known as the Cartesian method of scientific thinking. From this point forward, Europe separated itself from the investigative protocols of the ancients that dealt predominantly with the study of life, focusing on the causal planes and their intimate relationship with the human mind. The effectual realm, that is, those discernible forces, organic structures, and physical mechanisms of life that impact our senses, became the predominant qualifiers of reality, more so than the mental processes that exemplified the spiritual, and its intimate connection to the causal realm. Fact is, spiritual is a name that absolutely horrifies the materially constipated minds of the Western scientific priesthood, because their church doctrine teaches them that this word represents the superstitious, unscientific, mythical world of the obsolete cultures of black and brown civilizations. Their church has taught them to mock, ridicule, and dismiss as myth all scientifically based records and traditions exemplified by what turns out to be the highest spiritually and intellectually advanced civilizations that existed on our plane, who exemplified the very heights of human thought and achievements when the European was barely out of his caves. And so, I take this moment to remind you, Brother Neil deGrasse Tyson, of the great genetic stock from which you descend. That, for example, your ridicule and vilification of the so-called flat earth conspiracy is a denial and above all gross disrespect of your ancestral blood and heritage. I remind you as well of what Count Constantin Francois de Chassebeuf, aka Count Volney, wrote in 1787 when he visited Kem for the first time, and what he saw for himself firsthand. And I quote, he said, "Just think that this race of black men, today our slaves and the object of our scorn, is the very race that we owe our arts, sciences, and even our very use of speech." Now, there is a racist by the name of 7 Phoenician 7 who wants to completely disavow what it is that Count Volney said by using what in essence is called the Aryan model of world history, where they pervert and convert all the knowledge so that white people become the foundation of civilizations all around the world. So the Aryan model is a model written by racists back in the 18th century to twist, and I call it the twistery of European history. Yes, my brother Tyson, beguiling the naive and unsuspecting masses with your buffoonery does a monumental disservice to your children and grandchildren, because the legacy of lies you irresponsibly propagate for your 15 minutes of fame will socially brand them and their names with shame when the truth inevitably breaks free from the deceptive doctrines of your mind-manipulating cult and sees the light of day. In fact, one of your cult's greatest high priests turned heretic, Dr. Alexis Carrel, wrote the following in his monumental revelatory work, Man the Unknown. He said, "Men of science know not where they are going. And when they get there, they won't know where they are. And when they return, they won't know where they've been." End quote. He goes on to say, after all, scientists are only men. They willingly believe that facts which cannot be explained by their current theories just do not exist. Evident facts having an unorthodox appearance are summarily suppressed. As our ancient Kemetic, Cushitic, and Dravidian scientists once knew, and what awakened European scientists like Albert Michelson and Robert Milkelin knew, is that matter is nothing more than crystallized spirit, just as ice is crystallized water, and water is crystallized vapor. Our ancient melanated masters knew that 1, man is the crystallized avatar of God. 2, man is God folded over unto itself, hiding within the illusory cloaks of matter to participate in and experience its own realms of being and becoming. That all biological forms possessing senses, shapes, and infinite designs, all plants, all animals, all insects, are the sense-processing nerve endings acting as echo chambers and feedback modules of the Creator's materialized existence. And that 4, man is the most complex, highly specialized, and souled being of all creation, and expresses through his and her minds the most perfect specialization and the most complicated individualization of all spiritual principles comprising the sum and substance of the universal mind. And finally, beloved, the cult of the quantum sciences and their inquisitors exist to confine us to the space they have colonized between our ears, that fertile space where they embedded their linguistically based indoctrinational programming that they subtly downloaded into our central cerebral processors since childhood. This they did to assure that any attempt by us to intuitively tap into our genetically encoded divinity would trigger the random access memory of their indoctrinational programming, which will act as a virus that prevents us from expanding our personal consciousness beyond the confines of our entomological and epistemological incarceration. So, with the formal words of Alexis Carrel reverberating as a sober reference, is it not the very crux of sanity and logic, the very essence of critical thinking and reason, to be suspicious of what the Church of Quantum Theoretical Sciences and their media-based inquisitors promote and purport to be reality? It is from this point I'd like us to begin our exploratory journey, beloved brothers and sisters, deconstructing the perceptual paradigms of Western scientific thought on the subjects of life, creation, space travel, and time, their so-called quantum realm, their globe earth, etc., etc. All that we have been forced to accept, support, propagate, and participate in. And the unquestioning trust we have blindly assigned to those responsible for engineering and maintaining the stultifying paralysis and calculated persecution of independent explorers who dare to travel those uncharted territories that do not fail or fall into the quantum cult's prescripted definitions of reality. As the last surviving member of the fated vessel Pequod, Ishmael in the novel Moby Dick said, "Reality outruns apprehension."